Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Mark Guberti.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I'm very excited about this show. We are going to discuss how to create a powerful mastermind group with our guest, Ellory Wells. Ellory was a corporate rock star turned entrepreneur due to his exit strategy. He is now a coach who helps other entrepreneurs achieve greater success. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Ellory to the show.
What's up, Mark? Hopefully I can match your level of enthusiasm. You sound awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to as the show goes on. So starting off with the first question, I'm sure this will definitely boost your enthusiasm because I find that when I ask people this question as to why they got started, there's always that bubble of enthusiasm. So I want to ask you, what exactly got you started as a mastermind builder?
I had been coaching and blogging for a few years, and I think the short answer is simplicity and streamlining. But I had a bunch of people who were following me on Facebook, on my email list, who I'd interacted with, and all of these guys were asking me about the same question or these same types of questions, and they were all in about the same phase of their startup journey, and I was familiar with the mastermind concept. I'd been surrounding myself with the quality people that I had been for a few years. And I was like, you know what? These people are all asking about the same questions. I bet they would like to know each other. And I bet I could streamline what I'm doing and make it simpler if I introduced them and we formed this mastermind. So it was a combination of making connections and wanting to, well, I won't lie, I wanted to make a little bit of money too, but wanted to make those connections and streamline the Q&A process and really help people, provide people with the best resource that I could so that they'd have the greatest success of making their business success, or I should say the best chances of making their business a success as I could.
So your idea of mastermind was streamlining the Q&As and bringing people closer together who had the similar challenge in front of them. And these people, I mean, I know the nature of mastermind groups. They interact with each other. They help each other. Have these people helped you in any way by providing you with some knowledge that you didn't have before or motivating you to pursue new heights of goal setting?
You know, it's a great question, Mark, because I'd say both of those things. They motivate me and push me to always keep personal development at the forefront of my focus. I can't very well lead a group of people if I'm not constantly learning and improving. So right now I'm in my home office. I've got, well, I say home office, but I don't have a different office, so it's my only office. But I'm looking at my bookshelf right now of just books that I've purchased to help me be a better leader, communicator, coach. I've got and read books on email marketing systems, those kinds of things. So in one aspect, yes, I'm very motivated. They keep me motivated to always be learning. So I'm somewhat ahead of the curve, if you will, just so I can be able to respond with an educated answer when I get asked these questions. So I forgot your other question, Mark, but the second part was about motivation. But yeah, I'm very motivated to stay ahead of them in a variety of ways so that I can help them. And I think your other question was, have they taught me anything? And absolutely. I can't be a master of everything. I'm only a master of maybe a few things, but I've got people who are certified experts at email marketing, automation, sales funnels, those kinds of things working with me. I've got people who I think they're certified in like all the Adobe products and they're great at design. I learned from my members quite a bit, but I also try to stay ahead of the curve so I can help guide them to where they need to go.
So you have this idea of creating mastermind groups, and I want to ask you, what were you thinking about the path in front of you when you were just getting started out with this idea? You've heard great things about it, but now you're testing it out for your own brand.
Like, how did I implement mastermind groups, or what was my plan for them when I started them?
More specifically, like, what were your overall thoughts as you approached this new goal?
A lot of it was self-doubt. I'll be honest with you, Mark. I know a lot of people out there who we have an idea, and then just the world kind of comes in, friends, family, peers, and they don't necessarily mean to, but through their questioning process, we start to question our own self-worth and maybe our value. And I've thought several times, it's less often now than it was when I started my first masterminds just over 2 years ago. But like, am I really qualified to lead these people? Do I have the knowledge or skills, or what makes me any better? Or questions like, I know these people work really hard for their money. How can I charge them? So it's a lot of self-doubt and the overall long-term plan. And I don't know that when I first started, I don't think I had one, Mark. I was looking at various ways to use my skills and talents, various ways to make money in my business. And I don't know 2 years ago if I would have said, well, my prices will have tripled in 2 years. The number of people who I'll be sending Christmas cards out to will have quadrupled, or well, I guess it's quite a bit more than that, actually. I don't know that I necessarily had like a 2, 5, or 10 year plan for it.
So a lot of this was, at the beginning, you viewed it as a short term. You wanted to get it out and see what you would make of it. And I know it's been quite the journey since you started out. So I'm just wondering, what was the low point of your journey of creating all these mastermind groups?
The low point? I don't know. I don't want to sound overly confident, but it's been mostly up and up since we started the first one. The number of people has increased. The value that they've gotten has increased. The feedback has been pretty amazing. I guess if there was going to be a low point is when one of the mastermind groups just wasn't working out. There's only one out of, I mean, I've got an 80+% success rate, but we always tend to focus on the negative. So I'd say if there was a low point, it would be when one of the groups just it wasn't working out. It kind of dissolved. And then one of the girls, she just didn't want my advice anymore. And it was there's kind of one, and I don't talk about this one. Nobody's actually asked. And she just kind of really didn't want to have anything to do with me. I stand by my advice and those kinds of things. I wouldn't change it at all. But, those kinds of things make you question what you bring to the table. They make you question your ability. They made me question anyway my ability to do this as a business, as a coach, and as someone who can help people start their businesses as well.
I feel like people will have a similar story where they're doing something, they're doing great work, they're getting a lot of good feedback, but then there's that one person with a nasty comment, or the one person who strongly disagrees with what you're doing. What would you advise people? Like, how did you confront that issue?
If we really stand behind what we believe and what we have told somebody, screw them. I mean, if we're not going to backpedal and change our mind, if we know what we said was right, if we really believe it, forget them. I mean, there have been famous, successful people all throughout history who have haters. I don't know if you're familiar with Gary V, Mark, but he's a big popular guy. I agree with almost everything he says, and he's got a lot of haters. So the more you can polarize your audience, and it takes a lot of guts to get to that point, and it takes a lot of maturity and self-confidence, but the more you can polarize your audience, the more successful you will be. But as soon as you get someone who doesn't like you, it's like the I don't know, I don't remember exactly what it's the law of something in physics, an equal reaction kind of thing. So whenever someone really doesn't like you, someone out there, you might not know who it is, they really do like you. So for every hater you've got someone who loves your stuff, and those people who love what you do are the ones that are going to be your why you get up in the morning, the ones that will make you profitable as an entrepreneur. They're going to be the ones that buy all of your stuff. It's like Apple products. I'm not an Apple fan, but the Apple fanboys make Apple one of the biggest companies in the entire world. So whenever you have someone who just, whatever, Mark, I don't like you, I don't want to listen to you, that's probably a sign that you're doing something right. And forget about everybody else. And as Seth Godin says, what does he say? It's something about pay attention to the people who came to see you perform and ignore the heckler in the back of the room. Because if you have a heckler, that means you're doing something right. And we tend to, again, like I said before, we focus on that negative, and we just got to ignore it. And it takes practice. It takes thick skin. But I'd say it starts with really believing. I don't want to say believing in yourself, because that sounds a little bit corny, but whatever they don't like you for, if you really believe that that's the truth, that's the right way forward, that's the best advice that you could give, forget about them. You can't make them happy anyway.
I know that successful people, they have a lot of haters, and it's something that gets talked about frequently, and just the whole idea of ignoring them. But I never really thought of it from that law of physics standpoint, where physics wasn't my strong suit. So basically, like, if someone really hates you, there's someone else who really likes you. I never really viewed it that way. So in a sense, all of these haters, it's just an acknowledgement that you have really strong supporters also.
Yeah, I mean, you could do something that there's no reason for someone to get mad. Mark, I send out like Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas emails. I get people to unsubscribe from it. They don't unsubscribe and say I hate you, but they just don't. You can send out the nicest thing, no sales, no promotion, none of that. Just Merry Christmas. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season with your family, and somebody will unsubscribe from it. So the most pleasant, neutral thing that you could possibly do will cause someone to maybe be disenfranchised from what you have to say. So if the most harmless thing that you can do that, I mean, let's just do what we want, because we're gonna. I don't know if you curse on your show or not, so I'll try not to. Do whatever you want, because you're gonna make people mad anyway. So have fun with life. Life is too short. We could talk about all kinds of short life stories and be positive or negative. We just have to enjoy it. We're here for a certain amount of time. We're going to make people mad. We're going to make people happy, and we can't get caught up in the details.
So before we go a little deeper into how to create a successful mastermind group, you were talking about that level of enjoyment and getting into contact with enjoyment as much as possible. And I read up on how you are a miserable corporate rock star who, yes, you had all the trophies and awards, but you felt miserable and you wanted to make the transition into becoming your own boss and being happy with your the work that you did. So how did you manage to make that transition? Because I know there are people who they have a job right now, but they're wondering, how can I go from this job to creating my own brand, being an entrepreneur, and being my own boss?
Well, Mark, I got fired. I pushed the limit. I unboxed these things. I took I was writing a blog post, or actually it's on my sales copy for my coaching page. And I unboxed the trophies. They're sitting on my desk right now. The trophies I got when I worked at Dell. And I was always I was always trying to learn new things in addition to what what the company was teaching me. And one of those things was the thing that my boss used to get me out the door. And it's not the coolest story. It's not the one that makes me look the best. I didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It's all in my book. If anybody wants to check out the exitstrategybook.com, I go into a lot of detail there. My wife and I talked about it on one of my old podcast episodes, number 49, which on iTunes and all that stuff. Anybody wants to look at that. But if you really want to make the transition, it's not going to be a light switch. Back in the 80s or 90s, and you might know what I'm talking about, Mark, but in my mom's house, in the dining room, we had a dimmer switch. It's like the circle thing. You twist it one way and it gets brighter. You twist it the other way and it gets dimmer. But this is this gradual thing between total darkness and the lights being on full blast. And when people want to start their business, they want it to be the light switch. They want to go from making $50, $60, $80, $100, $200,000 a year in their corporate job, and they want to be able to go home, flip the switch, and then all of a sudden their business is replacing that income completely. They want to be making that $50, $60, $80, $200,000 a year. And it's more like the dimmer switch that I talked about. It's this transition, and that's why I wrote my book called The Exit Strategy, because it's a process. You've got to plan your exit. Unlike I did not believe in myself, and we can go into detail about that, Mark, if you got a lot of listeners that are in that corporate environment. But I had a lot of self-doubt until there is no until. I had a lot of self-doubt. I did not believe in myself. And then 2 weeks after New Media Expo in 2014, that was my last day to set foot in a corporate environment. And I had to decide, brush off the resume or try to make my business work. And what I wish I had done, combined with some of the things that I did do that were successful, put into kind of like an 8-week roadmap that I talk about. But you've got to plan it. You've got to. It's just like, if you're driving home from school or work for home, not like where you live now, but your parents' house for Christmas or something. You've got to plan the trip. You've got to set a destination, break points, and a series of turns, and when you accelerate and slow down, all those kinds of things. And you've got to do the exact same thing when you want to start your business, because we like to focus on that hockey stick moment, where you see just quote overnight success. That's actually a myth, but it's really, we've got to navigate all of that, the rest of the hockey stick, before you get the spike of growth. We've got to figure out how to navigate that, and you can't eliminate all risk, but you can lay a solid foundation that will give you a higher chance of success. And you've got to start really planning that. Well, as the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The same thing goes with your business. We've got to start planning that today. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So you were mentioning about the light switch and the gradual one, which, yes, I do know what you are referring to. And I know that for people to make that gradual jump and actually get through the whole hockey stick just before the spike, I know mastermind groups help out a lot with that. But if there's no activity in the group and stuff's not getting done, it doesn't really help at all. So how did you get stuff done within the mastermind groups that you built?
So let's see. How do I want to answer this question? I'm a fairly good facilitator. I've had some. I've always been in sports and connecting people, making sure I see the larger field. And then when I went into the corporate America, I was able to really simplify things and bring people in and build teams. And I've been able to. I think everyone should be in a mastermind. I don't know that everyone could lead them. I've got some resources on how I would do it if anybody if anybody wants them. But I'm a pretty good facilitator. I try to get people active and engaged. And if someone hasn't spoken up in a while, hey, what's going on? What do you think about what so and so just said? So on the given calls, we do video calls. Mark, we use Zoom.us as the software. It's Zoom software, so I can see everybody. And if someone hasn't talked or they haven't shared or given feedback, I'll pick on them a little bit. Just say, hey, what do you think? And then I also have a private community on Facebook where all of my mastermind groups and coaching clients can get together and be part of a larger community instead of just the 4 or 5 of us that meet every other week. So I encourage people to share their wins. And while you can't push a rope, you can't make people who really don't want to interact and engage do those things. But you just find ways. You find ways to do that and get people to share their expertise with other people. And when you can get them to teach each other, not only do they learn from one another, but as they teach, they learn. They get better at their craft as well. So it's a balancing act of pushing and pulling. It's getting people who are maybe quieter. I'm introverted as well, but getting those introverted people to speak up a little bit and communicate and make sure we state our goals so we can all provide feedback on those too. That's another big one too.
So you mentioned a lot of great insights, and obviously being the facilitator is very important, and being a good one is like critical for the mastermind group. So I'm just wondering, what are the specific things that you do? I mean, I know you mentioned a lot already, but how do you get the best out of people within the group so that they state their goals, but they're able to come back to you a few months later saying that I accomplished all of these goals?
I think it comes down to trust, Mark. And I try to I know people place a lot of trust with me every time they sign up for one of my services because they're not cheap, and it's not all about money, but they trust that I match them with good people, or they trust that I will help them get results, and one of the ways that I pull that information out of them is by knowing that they know I have their best interest in mind. And when you go into it armed with that kind of information, or that it's kind of an empowering thing to know that people trust you enough to allow you to critique them. When you allow someone to give you feedback, there's a lot of trust there. So, but I have to go into it as well. And anybody who wants to lead a mastermind group, you have to have the confidence to not care if they like you after the comment, if it's what's best for them. But you also have to be able to, you got to be positive. And I'm trying to think some of the maybe more practical things, Mark, because it's not always like, oh, do this, and you'll be successful. You've got to read the situation. You've got to understand personality types and some group dynamics. But you have to go into every conversation and situation with an open mind that you're going to help someone get further down the road and achieve their goals, and be willing to get in their face and say, you need to cut the crap and get back to work, because ultimately you're helping them achieve the goals that they've set for themselves, not the goals that you set for them. And that's a big distinguisher. When we're in school or when we've got a job, usually a manager sets our goals, a sales quota, or a number of boxes sealed or something like that. But whenever you join a mastermind group and you set goals for yourself, you have to give other people permission to keep you accountable to yourself and what you want to accomplish yourself. Because if you're not willing to do that, you probably will not have a very successful mastermind time.
So you emphasized earlier that you group the right people with each other because that's helpful for them accomplishing their goals and getting everything done. So how exactly do you determine who goes where so that you have the ideal mastermind groups filled with people who are going to motivate each other and help each other get their goals accomplished?
That's a good question. That's a tough question. I have a conversation on the phone with everybody before I put them into a group. I want to get to know them, their personality type, what they're looking for. I have a questionnaire process as well. So before anybody works with me, either in a mastermind or coaching, they have to answer a series of questions. So I look at the questions, see if people are struggling with the same things, if they have some of the same goals. But here's something that I think has been key to the success of my masterminds, Mark, and possibly contributes to a really cool group dynamic. I don't put people in a group with other people who want to do the same things. You know, we're all entrepreneurs. We all want to start, build, or grow a business, but I'm not going to put a bunch of authors together, because when authors get together, they talk about authors stuff and not marketing or sales funnels or communication or anything like that. So what I do that I think contributes to this good group dynamic is I pair people with people who have different, or who are in different niches or in different industries. So, for example, this last group, a guy wants to start, he wants to generate money through ad revenue for doing community type websites, with a guy who is a software engineer, with a woman who is a teacher and wants to talk about how to do art, people who want to design things and those kinds of things. She's been a teacher for a long time and wants to teach people how to do that. With, let's see who else is in that group. A guy who just sold a business that was in that had physical products. They do stuff with like neighborhood design, and they have they used to make concrete products. So none of those people are in the same industry. So that forces each member to communicate what they want to do and their goals and their struggles and those kinds of things with people who are outside of that industry. And I found that by doing that, it helps them in the long term be better marketers of their product, but also in the short term helps them be more clear as to what their mission is and what their product is and those kinds of things. So it's a combination of getting a diverse group who I think will get along. And we have our second meeting today. We just started, so we have our second meeting here in a few hours. And it's kind of, I think it's a talent, maybe it's a hidden talent I have of just making sure people will get along.
So you've created a lot of mastermind groups, and it's very easy to tell that you are an expert in this field.
Thank
you. You're welcome. But I know that people who are thinking about pursuing the same path or have pursued the same path, I know that these people are making a certain mistake, a really big mistake. And I'm asking, what do you think that big mistake is that people are making with creating mastermind groups?
So you're thinking there is a set of mistakes that you've seen that are, what do you mean? What do you mean?
What is the biggest mistake you think people make?
I think the biggest mistake is probably just getting together. Well, there's probably a lot. They probably set it up wrong. They probably chose the people wrong. They probably didn't think it through beyond like 3 meetings. It's not social hour, Mark. We have a lot of fun, but I see mastermind groups who dissolve. It's more of people who get together because they're already friends. And maybe that's maybe that's part of my success, is that I get people who don't necessarily know each other, and they have to, it's like we go to war together and we develop bonds and strengthen that friendship over time. Because whenever you just get together with friends, it's the productivity seems to not be there. And I'm just assuming, because I've seen a lot of people who start a group and then they tell me afterward that they failed, and I try to look and see how they were set up and diagnose that afterward. So they take a really casual look at it. They just say, "Oh, we're friends, so we'll start getting together," and that's probably cause of failure. I don't say I charge for my mastermind groups. I would not say that you have to charge for your mastermind groups. However, by charging, I get to do some other things, send out Christmas cards, pay for recording software, host video files, and some of those other things. But whenever people pay, they have skin in the game, and they're more likely to show up because they're paying for a service. And again, not saying that you have to charge, but everybody needs to be really serious about why they're there. And just getting together because these guys are cool is not enough. You've got to go in like, I want to learn something. I want to learn how to build my email list. I want to learn how to be a better coach. I want to learn how to do financing. And each one of these other people is an expert in that area, and I want to get together with them on a regular basis to learn from them. And I think that when mastermind groups fail, it's probably because they put a group of friends together without much thought as to how we can all help each other grow our businesses.
So you've talked to a lot of different people, advised a lot of people on how they can grow their businesses, and I'm sure this has been quite the journey for you, and I'm sure you've learned a lot along this journey. And I ask you, with all of that in mind, what is the best lesson you have learned on your journey?
I'd say that's a hard question, but an easy one at the same time, because the biggest lesson is nobody is going to give as much care, thought, energy, excitement as you. If you want something to happen in your life, Mark, you are going to have to make it happen. And I've learned that myself. I don't want to say the hard way, but I've had things fall through the cracks that I really wanted to happen, but nobody's going to show up with any more enthusiasm than I am, which is, by the way, great that you bring that to the introduction of your podcast, because if you started on a low note, the guest probably would. But in that situation, or that example applies to anything that we do in life, Mark, because there's a lot of this entrepreneur stuff is kind of hard, and we can't go into it half-hearted. I wanted to say the other word, the one that you sit on, but half-hearted maybe works too. But nobody's going to show up with more intensity than us. So if we take a half-hearted attitude towards it, how can we expect somebody else to take us seriously? So if it's, as the saying goes, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And too many people sit back and wait. They put the pieces in motion, or they think, oh, it's now, get after it. What are you waiting on? Like if you want one person to join your mastermind group or 10, you got to go out there and hunt for it. You have to, whatever you want to do in your business, you have to be a salesperson. You have to sell the value of what you have to provide. And if you have no value, then go home. But everybody out there that's listening, we've got to take the bull by the horns. We've got to put ourselves in the driver's seat. We've got to press our own foot to the gas pedal. And I just see too many people out there that are just kind of like, it'll happen for me one day. Or I'm doing, focused, head down, I'll get noticed. fill in the blank. I've had all of those thoughts. I've overcome many of them, probably not all of them. But if there was one thing that I had to say to anybody out there who's like, how can I make this happen? Make it happen. Take action. Do something that might not work. And every business is a customer-facing business, so you can't avoid having conversations with real people. So I don't care if you're shy or introverted. I'm both of those things, but here we are. And that's the only way. If you go to ellorywells.com/2016 review, you'll see the last 12 months of my business, what's worked, what didn't, and then I've done this for 4 years. But the reason why I brought that up is one of the things that has worked for me to grow my business year after year after year is that I ask for business. I make it happen. If someone says no, I find somebody else. And that's how I would answer your question.
That's a very great lesson that we should all remember. I mean, grabbing the bull by the horn is like the great way. That's something really great that you have to take away from this episode. It's really great advice for any entrepreneur who is trying to reach their next breakthrough, regardless of how big that breakthrough is. So before we wrap this episode, I just want to ask you for an awesome inspirational quote that you can think of right now.
Oh man. This is one that I wanted to print this on a t-shirt, but my wife told me I shouldn't. But something that I've tried to live by, Mark, is of course it's not on the tip of my tongue anymore. You can't make a positive change with a negative attitude.
That's a good one. I mean,
thank you.
It's true, because the mindset really is everything. I truly believe that with all this goal pursuing, the goal is accomplished or unaccomplished already. Like, the battle is over before it ever begins. It's all based on what happens in the mind.
Yeah, there's a great book out there by Jack Canfield, who wrote all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. It's called Success Principles. I'm in the middle of it, and I really love it. And he talks about exactly what you said, Mark. Is I'm sure you've been in a classroom or a cubicle or at work or something with somebody, and you're experiencing the exact same thing. And all of the events are happening, but you're enjoying it, and the other person has just got the sourpuss face and they're not enjoying it. What's the difference? It's just our mindset. So you're absolutely right, and you can't make a positive change with a negative attitude.
Well, you just gave me another book that I have to add to my wish list. Nice job.
Thanks. I was at a conference a month or so ago, and I think I bought 8 while I was sitting there in the audience, so I know exactly what you mean.
I don't blame you. I mean, if it was a really good conference, I probably would have done the same thing. All right, so thank you for taking the time to be on this episode. So before we officially end it, I'm just going to give you some time to take the floor and let everyone know where we can find you on the web.
So everybody can find me at ElloryWells.com/Mark, ELLORYWELLS.com/Mark. And I might have something for you to download to get you on the right track with your next mastermind. I'll show you exactly what I do, how the software that I use, the schedule, why I picked all of those things. So if you go to ElloryWells.com/Mark, you can download that resource. And if you are a reader, Mark, we just talked about books. I don't know if you've had a chance to check out my last book, theexitstrategybook.com. I published it or released it in July, and it's about making that transition that we talked about. There's not a whole lot about masterminds specifically, but that will definitely be a part of my next book, which is called Growth Strategy. So we had exit strategy, now we're going to be in growth strategy, but that's still a long way off. But my overall goal, Mark, is to help people, as corny as it might sound, not go to work miserable every day. And I know I think you emailed and said you're, the teenage entrepreneur, so you might not have to go to a concrete and steel, faceless, crappy corporate job every day. But somebody out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. I liked my job when I worked at Sonic, but I smelled like a tater tot at the end of the night when I was 16. So if you're looking to do something a little bit different, check out any of the resources that I have, ellorywells.com/Mark, and I'll send you the exact guide that I use to build successful masterminds going on for 2 years now. So,
Ellory, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast. It was a pleasure to have you today.
It was awesome, Mark. Thank you, and best of luck to you. I wish I'd started when I was a teenager. How old are you now, Mark?
18.
I wish I had. When I was 18, I think I worked at American Eagle in the mall, and I was working at Sonic at nights, and I wish I had been as focused as you are on personal development. So bravo for figuring that out years before I did, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. Best of luck to you too.
Thanks, Mark.
I thoroughly enjoyed that interview. Ellory provided some killer insights on what makes a successful mastermind group work. Being part of an effective mastermind group will give you more motivation to pursue and ultimately accomplish your goals. Regardless of what you do in life, you'll be more enthusiastic about it than anyone else. So be as enthusiastic as possible about that big breakthrough you're chasing, and don't be afraid to grab the bull by the horns. If you forgot to take notes, then don't worry. We've got you covered with the show notes. Visit markberry.com/E22 for those. You can ask your questions over there, which I'll be more than happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. Two ways you could do this are through markberry.com/iTunes or markberry.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markberry.com/retweet.
This podcast is a production done by Mark Guberti. For more insights, head on over to markguberti.com.